You've probably been told your entire life, don't bottle up your emotions. It's bad for you, right? It's one of those wellness rules that just feels like a fact. But what if it's not the whole story? What if sometimes bottling it up is actually okay?
So let's just ask the question straight up. Is pushing down what you're feeling on the inside, what psychologists call expressive suppression, is that always, a one-way ticket to feeling anxious and unhappy? I mean, the common wisdom is a huge yes. We've all been taught that suppressing your feelings just leads to trouble. And to be fair, a ton of research has backed that up, linking it to depression, anxiety, all that stuff. But that's where the story starts to get a lot more interesting. Because it turns out new research is telling us that the negative effects might not come from the act of suppressing itself. It's all about the motivation behind it. It's not really what you're doing, it's why you're doing it that seems to make all the difference. So, where does this new idea come from? Well, it's from a really fascinating study by Xu, Zhang, and Zai that's coming out in the Journal of Counseling Psychology. They took a much closer look at this whole suppression question, and what they found could really change how we think about our emotional health. Okay, so let's make sure we're on the same page. When we say expressive suppression, we just mean the conscious choice to hide the outward signs of what you're feeling. Like keeping a straight face when you're really annoyed, or holding back tears in a meeting. It's something you decide to do. So here's what the researchers did. They followed almost 500 college freshmen for an entire semester. They tracked how often they used expressive suppression and how it was connected to their mental well-being. But, and this is the important part, they also measured two other key psychological factors that they thought might just change everything. And here they are, the two game changers. On one hand, you have authenticity, that feeling that your actions, even when you're holding back, line up with who you really are. And on the other hand, you have ambivalence, this internal tug of war about whether you should or shouldn't show your emotions. These two factors, as it turns out, are the keys to this whole puzzle. So let's look at the first big discovery, which is all about what we can call the authenticity shield. It's like this powerful defense that can protect you from the bad side of suppression. Now this is where things get really interesting and go against everything we've been told. The study found that for students who had a strong sense of authenticity, there was basically no link between suppressing their emotions and having things like depression or anxiety. The bad effects just weren't there for them. So why? How does that work? Well, the idea is that if you're acting from a place of authenticity, the choice to suppress an emotion actually feels right. It feels consistent with your values. Maybe you're staying calm in a crisis because you value being a good leader. Because that choice feels like your own and it's done for a good reason, it doesn't create all that stressful internal conflict. But of course, there is a flip side. And this is where holding back can become really harmful. The researchers also found something we can call the ambivalence trap, which is when that internal conflict turns suppression into something toxic. This study got really specific about this. The most damaging kind of conflict was what they called affect ambivalence. And this isn't just being indecisive. It is a very specific conflict that's driven by the fear of what will happen if you show your feelings. You want to express yourself, but you are terrified of being judged or rejected for it. And honestly, this graph from the studies says it all. Just look. The solid line is people with low ambivalence. For them, using more suppression doesn't really change much. But that dashed line, wow. For people with high ambivalence, the more they suppress, the more their anxiety shoots up and their life satisfaction plummets. I mean, the effect is crystal clear. The researchers themselves put it perfectly. They said the combination of expressive suppression and high affect ambivalence might be particularly detrimental. So here's the point. Suppression itself isn't the villain. It's suppression combined with this fear-driven internal battle that's the real recipe for trouble. You're not just holding back. You're fighting a war with yourself while you do it. So, what's the big takeaway for us in our everyday lives? It means we need a new rule for emotional health. It's not about if you suppress your emotions, it's about why. This really breaks it all down. When you choose to hold something back, is it coming from a place of purpose because it lines up with something you truly value? Or is it coming from a place of fear and conflict because you're terrified of what other people will think? That's the real question you have to ask yourself. So it's time to update that old piece of advice. It's not a simple never suppress. The new rule is more like suppress with purpose and authenticity. It's about choosing to do it not from a place of fear, but from a place of self-awareness and being true to yourself.
And that kind of leaves us with one last thing to think about. Look back on your own life. Can you think of a time when holding back an emotion, staying calm, or keeping quiet actually felt like the strongest, most authentic choice you could have made in that moment? It's a really interesting question, and the answer might just change how you think about your own emotions from now on.